Hi. In this video, I've been asked to kind of show step by step how to do a smooth bind using the features in the 2.0 panel. The last time I made a rigging video was for MayaStar 6, which didn't have the 2.0 panel in it. And so um, Optimo did make a video or series of videos going over all the different features, but sometimes it's nice just to see kind of a step-by-step how do you do things, sort of a workflow kind of thing. So that's what this video is kind of for. It's just to get you the basic workflow and how to do it in the panel 2.0. Okay. So here we have a dress, and I recommend rigging in the small avatar and not the big avatar. This is the centimeter scale avatar, which is the default size for MayaStar. Because if you don't do your initial rigging with the avatar being small, you won't be able to use the Edit Skinned Geo, which is a fantastic tool that Optimo created. And yeah, this tool here, which I'll demonstrate, is amazing, and it'll save you from tearing your hair out. So, okay. So before we do our smooth bind, you can see here we don't have scales of 1, 1, and 1. So even if we were doing the rigging to the meter scale avatar, which is 100 times bigger, and say this said 100, 100, 100, we'd still, what you do is just click Clean Geo. And what that does a number of things all at once. It does freeze transformation, so now we have 1, 1, and 1. But it also does a delete history on steroids. It does a great job at getting rid of a bunch of garbage nodes that might have been created when you were, inserting edge loops and merging vertices together and moving things and doing all sorts of different things. When you do those things, you can end up with garbage nodes, garbage data in your mesh that can later on cause problems. So it's always a good idea you always want to clean geo before you do smooth bind. Okay, so now we're going to do smooth bind. The old way, you used to have to select all the bones that you wanted to rig to, and I always said select all the bones. That's the easiest, the most safest way to do it. But now all you have to do is select your mesh clothing and just click smooth bind. This is something that's going to be in the next update. We've been having problems with multiple bind poses being created without people knowing about it. And it's not really a MayaStar issue, it's a Maya issue. Maya used to give you a lot more warnings when you were about to create a multiple bind pose. But over the years, they stopped giving you those warnings. And so it became really easy to end up with multiple bind poses without even realizing it. So Optimo decided to make a little warning. If it detected that your avatar is not in the bind pose position, and it could be something that's invisible to the naked eye, but is actually just like 1 or 2 digits off. So it looks like it's in the perfect bone position, but it's not. And as far as the bind pose 1. And so he made this window that opens up and lets you know, hey, you're not in the bind pose. Would you like to go to the bind pose before smooth binding? And so if you were doing a custom bind pose, and you had, because if you're doing a custom bind pose, like say you wanted to do an A pose, you would say no, because you'd already put your avatar in the A pose, and you just click no, and then it would go ahead and it would do the smooth bind. But you'd end up with a multiple bind pose. If you don't want to end up with a multiple bind pose, click Save Bind Pose after you put your avatar in the A pose or whatever pose you're using. Then do the smooth bind. Okay, the smooth bind. And that way you won't get this warning at all. And you'll only end up with 1 bind pose, because MayaStar, there's a number of features that rely on bind pose 1. And if you have more than one bind pose, that can confuse it. Or if your bind pose, when you end up with multiple bind poses, sometimes somehow Maya renames bind pose to like bind pose 2 or bind pose 3, and then all of a sudden things stop working in MayaStar. So you can have multiple bind poses, but you might run into some problems where some features don't work anymore. So that's what this is for, say bind pose. So you would say bind pose before, like, so when you're doing an A pose, so that you don't have to get this window warning at all. Okay, but now we're going to say yes, because we do want it to go into the bind pose 1, and we just click yes, and it went to the bind pose 1. You didn't notice any difference, but there was a slight difference, although it wasn't, you couldn't see it with the naked eye, and it did smooth bind the mesh to all the bones that are in the skeleton. So now, why do you want to have all the bones, your mesh dress rigged, or your mesh clothing to all the bones in the skeleton, including any face bones and all that kind of stuff? It's so that when you go to transfer the weights from the body to your mesh clothing, that all the bones are going to be there. If you missed a bone, if you were selecting the bones manually, and you said, oh, I think I just need this bone, this bone, this bone, this bone, and you were selecting them manually, and then smooth bind to it, but say you missed a bone, then you transfer the weights from the avatar body to the mesh clothing. Well, the bone that you missed when you did your initial rigging, that weight information isn't going to make it onto your mesh clothing. So that's why it's always just easiest to have it rigged to all the bones. And that's so that's what Optimo did when he created this button, was it just selects all the bones in the skeleton and then does the smooth bind to your mesh clothing, or your mesh, the thing that you're rigging. Okay, so now we're going to copy the weights. Okay, so you can select the mesh body, you can shift select your mesh clothing there, or you can go into the outliner and you can select the body there and hold down the control key and select the dress. I could have also held the shift key, but the problem with doing the shift, if you get that used to using that, is look, it selects everything in between when you use shift. So, but if you use control, you can select just what you want to select. So, okay, so we got the the body first, because that's the source. The weights are coming from the body, so that's the source. And it's going to the target, which is the dress. Okay, and then you just sit there and you go copy weights. Okay, depending on how many vertices your mesh clothing has, it can take longer to for the weights to copy. Okay, so it copied over, and you can go to shape sliders, and you can come down here to body fat, and you see it changes shape pretty well. But you see it's kind of messed up right here. Okay, you can also go to torso. I usually like just going to the breast size. See it, and it's really overlapping there. So if we go, let's go to the mesh shape. That will reset all that. Okay. And the default, all avatars' bodies are usually rigged to the bones in the bone positions that are defined by the avatar skeleton XML file that is in every viewer. They all have the same file, and that file defines the bone names and their positions and rotations and scales and all that. So it defines the neutral bind shape or bind pose. And so that's the mesh shape. Default shape, notice how her head got smaller, her arms got longer. That is just the shape that Linden Lab decided to use. The slider settings that the Linden Lab decided to use would be when you create a brand new shape in Second Life. So that's why that's the default shape. But the mesh shape, or neutral bone mesh shape, mesh default, and sometimes it's called, is where the bones are in the same exact positions as defined by the avatar skeleton XML file. And that's neutral. Nothing has been, no sliders have been set to affect the bones. So it's a neutral shape. No, the bones are not influencing the shape at all. Or the sliders, I'm sorry, the sliders settings are not influencing the shape whatsoever. Okay. And so say I wanted to do the breast size and come in here. Oh, I'm going to hide the skeleton. We don't need that right now. Okay. I know it's a little hard to see, but there's a little bit of a crease there. Okay, so now I'm going to show you some of the other tools. So we go to rigging, and like I said, this is the same as if you're using a dev kit body that you MayaStarized. Okay, so we're going to go to Paint Skin Weights tool. So we click Paint Skin Weights, but notice what happens. Look how huge that brush is. It's difficult to weight paint on the avatar that's this small. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the meters. See, this says when we click the set, it's going to go to the meter scale. So it's going to make the avatar 100 times bigger. Okay. And we'll click that. Go here. Okay. And the left pec is there. It's set on smooth. And we can just smooth this in between. And maybe smooth this a little bit down here. Okay, that's one way. You can smooth the weights is with that. And of course you would do the other side. Or we could have clicked probably in object mode. We could have clicked mirror weights. And that will mirror the weights over. So that, although I thought a dialog box would open up when you do that, but maybe not. And so it mirrors the weights from one side to the other. Let's see. The other way you could also do it is we could go into vertex mode, and we could select the vertices from there to there, there to there. We can increase the selection, maybe a little bit more. We don't need these down here, or these. And we could have hammered the weights. See, hammered the weights. And now it looks nice and even. Okay. So those are just some of the tools. I have that video. I'll put a link to the video of rigging. And like I said, in the description of that, there's a bunch of free tools that you can use while you're making adjustments. But I'm not going to go over all that in this video because it'd be way too long. It's already, 15 minutes long, or 13 and 30 minutes, seconds long? Okay. So that's sort of some of the tools for adjusting the weights. Let's go back to centimeter scale, because I'm going to show you another tool. Okay, let's go back to shape sliders and go back to the mesh shape. Okay. So while you're adjusting the weights and stuff, you can scrub down here to see if there's any poke through or anything like that. Let's say there was some poke through right here. Let's go back to go to bind pose and go back to rigging. Okay, and you've adjusted the weights. You've tried everything. You've tried adjusting the weights every different way you could, but you still got poke through. You're still getting poke through on the legs in a particular area. And how do you deal with that? Well, that's where the Edit Skinned Geo comes in. Is you select your mesh clothing, you click Edit Skinned Geo. I'm going to say 1 and say done. And see, it creates a duplicate 1 meter or 1 unit over. I could have said 0.5 and it would have been right here, but it doesn't matter. It's close enough. Okay, so what does this do? Okay, so say you're scrubbing through here to see how things react as the joints are rotating stuff, and you're getting a bunch of poke through here, and you just simply can't get it. No matter how you try to adjust the weights, you just simply can't get it. So if you go to vertex here and go to tool settings and turn on soft select, and you can even turn on symmetry. We'll say object. I think it's X. Is it X or? Oh no, that's not it. It's Y. There we go. Okay, so it's Y. Okay, so you could turn on that. And if you hold down the B key, hold down your left mouse button while holding down the B key, you can make the brush, the area that the soft select is going to influence different. Now, so say there's some poke through there. Okay, I'm going to kind of show you. There we go. You have some poke through, right? In the legs there. All you have to do is, even though this leg is bent upward, you're not going to pull this upward. You're going to, it's relative to the mesh in the bind pose. And so now you pull it, and you see if I pull it big time, it comes out like that. Okay, so instead of that, you can just pull it forward just enough so that it doesn't have any poke through. Okay, you could do that on the mesh clothing itself, and I used to do it all the time. But the problem is, a good amount of time the vertices would freak out and they'd shoot all over the place, and it also creates a lot of garbage nodes, and so that your mesh ends up with a lot of garbage nodes in it, which can cause problems. By having this duplicate and making the edits on the duplicate, you're keeping your original mesh nice and clean, and it's not going to end up with a bunch of garbage nodes in there. So we've adjusted. So that's what the edit skin geo does. Is so you can do little tiny tweaks like that, so that you're not getting poked through. And it is a lifesaver. Believe me, there's times when I tried adjusting the weights, I just couldn't get rid of the poke through. It looked fine maybe when it was in the T pose or in the bind pose, but as soon as the avatar started moving, you started getting poked through, or if I increased the body fat and I got poked through and I just couldn't adjust it with the weights, I can just adjust the shape of the clothing just ever so slightly. And so yeah, this is a big deal. This is a lifesaver. Okay, so once you've done that, go back into object mode, and you can just, after you've made your changes to your shape, and just delete it. Okay, so we're almost ready to export. Okay, so we've adjusted the weights, we've got the poke through and all that kind of stuff adjusted, and we're getting ready to export out our mesh as a DAE. Now I'm going to also put a link to another video that has 2 mel scripts in it. One mel script you'll have to get off of where you downloaded MayaStar. It's no longer available. I show it in the video where you can get it in the video, but that website no longer exists. So, and I can't find it anywhere else. So I'm just going to make it available on the download. It's just a small little mel script. What it does is it finds all the vertices, because what can happen is, even if you have it set to, when you do the smooth bind, having only 4 joints maximum influencing vertices, through the process of smoothing and hammering the weights and what have you, you can end up, especially weight painting, you can end up with vertices that have more than 4 joints or bones influencing them. And it looks fine in Maya, but then when you upload it to Second Life, it doesn't look fine. because the uploader in Maya and in Second Life, the mesh uploader in Second Life, when it detects more than 4 bones influencing a vertice, it simply deletes 2 of the excess bones, and that messes up your weights, and it looks horrible. Okay, and there's no warning, there's no nothing. It just happens. They just do it behind the scenes, and you don't realize they do it, and then you're tearing your hair out because it's like it looks fine and perfect in Maya, but in Second Life, it's doing all this weird stuff, and you're tearing your hair out, trying to figure out what's going on. And that's what's going on. So the script that's no longer available where the video says it is, what it does is it finds all the vertices. You start off in object mode. You click the mouse script to run the mouse script, and it will find all the vertices that have more than 4 bones influencing it. And so you can see exactly where the problems are. Okay. Then after that, you go back into object mode and you click the second script, which is still available on the website. That's in the video. And what that does is it prunes the extra. It does what the Linden Lab mesh uploader does, but it does it a million times better. And it won't mess up your weights. And it works 99% of the time. You click it once and it works. It prunes all the vertices that have the excess bones on them. But every once in a while it leaves a couple, so you have to run it a second time. So you can either get both scripts, and install them on your shelf. That's what these are. These are shelves. Install it on the shelf so you can click on it. Or you can just get the one that prunes the excess joints off, so you're at 4 maximum bones influencing each vertice. You can just click it twice, and 99.99% of the time that's going to work just fine, and you won't have any leftover vertices that have more than 4 bones influencing it. Okay. Now Maya has in here, I believe there's where you can prune those bones. I forget which one it is. Or is it in skeleton? It's one of these. I can't remember which one. Remove joints? No, I forget which one it is. It's in here somewhere, and it's horrible. It does an absolute horrific job, as bad as the Linden Lab, so don't use it. You're going to want to use this mouse script. Like I said, I'll have a link to that video, so you can go watch the video, because you need to know how to make the buttons for your shelf and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not going to go through that in this video. It's just too long. We're already at 23 minutes. Okay. So once you've run those two scripts, or just run the one that prunes the excess bones off twice, now we're almost ready to export. What you have to do, because we did the smooth bind to all the bones, this is rigged to way more than 110 bones, which is the maximum limit you can rig a single mesh. And there's officially in the Linden Lab skeleton, there's 159 bones. Because this avatar here doesn't have the hind legs, the tailbone, or the wings, it only has 140. But still, that's more than 110. So, you want to select your mesh clothing, and you want to remove unused influences. Okay, and it removed 10 bones. Okay, so now we're well below 110 bones. And now we're ready to export out. Now, this is something that's also going to be new in the next update. It was supposed to be in the last update, but I messed up and I didn't get it in there. If this is checked, when you export out your DAE will be triangulated. If you don't want it to triangulate it, just turn it off and click Export Selection. And see, we've already ran Remove Unused Influences. And now we'll just export out. And depending on how many vertices your mesh clothing is, the more vertices, the longer it will take to export. The slower your computer, the longer it takes to export. The less RAM you have, the longer it will take to export out. But it will export out, and it will select automatically all the correct options for Second Life for exporting DAE. Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about real quick is this particular dress. Okay. This particular dress, let me go back in object mode. A little easier to see. Okay. The density is too high. There's 5,000 this dress is 5,000, which actually is not horrible for Second Life. But it's really overkill, especially the skirt area here. I would probably oops, let's turn off the soft select and the symmetry. Okay. Okay, I would probably, let me go here, let me turn on use default materials. It's just a little easier to see. I'd probably select double clicking these and select every other one. And I know there's a way you can select every other one in the edge loop there, and then do convert to contiguous. No, select contiguous edges. So that would be probably a little bit faster, but I'm just showing you. Okay, I'd probably select every other one, then go into modeling. Where is it? Delete edges and vertex. So that's a little bit less dense. See, nice squares is kind of like what you want. That's a little stretch, but these are getting square, more square, and more square. So this one, up here you need more detail. I could probably have deleted an edge loop or two in here. But you need, especially in the breast area, you need enough detail vertices so that when they have their breasts made to be much larger, that there's enough detail resolution that when the breast is bigger and these are spread out farther apart, you'll still have a nice smooth result when the breasts get bigger. And you see it went from 5,000 to 3258. And this would probably be something much more like what I would probably do. Because it's also easier to weight paint and to adjust the weights on fewer vertices. So there is a benefit to you to make things more efficient and to get rid of excess edge loops and stuff because it's just easier to weight paint, easier to adjust individual weights of individual vertices if you have fewer of them to have to worry about. And it also causes less lag. So it's a win-win-win-win-win for everybody. And let's turn off default materials. There we go. And so yeah, so that's the last little bit. Sometimes you get weird stuff like this. Let's just go to bind pose. There we go. And that's fine to delete edges. It's not going to mess up the weights. It's okay to delete edges after you've finished your rigging. So even though I had done, see, I wouldn't be done adjusting this. I'd want to adjust the vertices along here to make it a little bit smoother. But I have another video showing how to rig a skirt, so you don't need to see that in this video. I'd also want to smooth this area out a little bit here and a little bit here, and I'd want to see it in different poses, watch different animations, go to the shape slider, making the extreme shapes of being fat and the breasts as big as they could be. That will really show you where the problems are. You need to see where the problems are. So that's the way you find out where the problems are, is just increase the body fat to maximum and then have her go through different animations and poses, and you'll be able to see where the problems lie. See, this is a little bit right here. It's a little bit too... I'd like to smooth that a little bit. So I'd smooth this area about a little bit, smooth this area about a little bit. And yeah. But like I say, I have another video showing how to do that. So, go to bind toes, and we're back. Mesh shape, get the face back. And so, yeah, so that's the basic workflow if you're going to be using the MayaStar 2.0 panel. You know, is you're going to, you know, I've gone over the basics of the tools, and so that's the basic workflow. You can export out weights and import weights if you need to, which happens from time to time, where you need to export out your weights and then re-import them. But those are special circumstances, which I'm not going to go through right now. But every once in a while you might find that, oh, maybe I need to, or say you want to try, you can export out the weights and then try rigging it again. And if you don't like the new rigging, you can import your old weights that were, you know, closer, so you can kind of make a backup of your weights that way. Like I said, the triangulate, we already went over that. The DAEs that you export out with the triangulate off, like I said, they become sort of a backup file, so that if your original file becomes corrupt or you lose it, but you know where you have the DAE file is, you can import the DAE file, and it'll be nice and not triangulated, which is a lot easier visually to work with. It'll look just like this. Awesome. Alrighty. Well, believe it or not, that's a much faster video than what I had been using. I had been doing, been taking me like 40-50 minutes to do the same video. So I got it down to 32, so not too bad. Alrighty. Well, we'll see you in the next video, and I hope this really helps.